we're talking about this potential matchup between Giulio and Jasdil. Giulio is a player that performed incredibly well. I first became familiar with them during the Players' Cup era, the online era in VGC, with a lot of strong performances there, but has been able to transition that into live events as well over the last couple of years. EUIC top 8 earlier this year, OCSE top 16 as well, then a Bremen Regional top 4 back in 2022, and then a finalist at the Leo Regional Championships in 2022.
Yeah, and he is going to be playing Heatran, Fluttermane, Amoonguss, Ironhands, Cresselia, Landorus, all Pokemon that we've already seen a little bit of today. That Amoonguss playing Leaf Storm is very interesting. Usually you see something like a Protect there, but we have already seen an Amoonguss with both Leaf Storm and Sludge Bomb today.
Yeah, no Protect necessary from this Amoonguss. I think it's also really interesting to note this Heatran set having Will-O-Wisp as its last slot there. Pretty much you need a Fire Attack, Earth Power, and Protect, and so opted for this Magma Storm Will-O-Wisp strategy on Leftovers Heatran could be pretty important depending on how these matchups go, because he doesn't have say a Terra Fairy option. It's just the Terra Grass, which is really tough against 2 flying types on the other end, and also doesn't have Flash Cannon either, but maybe those burns are more crucial to the strategy.
Yeah, a few weeks ago I would have said that, I definitely want Flash Cannon on my Heatran to, have something to hit opposing Terra Fairy Heatrans, but they seem to be playing Terra Grass more often right now, so yeah, maybe that Flash Cannon not as important anymore, and that Will-O-Wisp, of course, with all the physical attackers in this meta, can be very, very useful if it hits.
Yeah, same as Magma Storm, right? Magma Storm can do a lot of damage if it hits. But let's see what Giulio has up against him with this strategy. Is he going to be facing off against Jasdil Singh Deo on Team India, having Hisuian Arcanine, Goldengo, Rillaboom, Urshifu, Rapid Strike, Tornadus, and there is the Landorus incarnate form with that very patented Life Orb Sheer Force strategy.
Yeah, that is definitely going to do a lot of damage, especially, with the rain up and the sandstorm. Sludge Bomb also, very good to hit anything that it cannot hit with Earth Power or, Sandseer Storm. And yeah, this Rillaboom, once again, not going for U-turn, but high horsepower instead, which makes sense, now that Arcanine Hisuian has become one of the strongest and most successful Pokemon in the current VGC format. Makes sense that you would want something to cover for it. And of course, Urshifu, also one of the best Pokemon in the format. Goldengo, it's good to see it back a little bit now, because I feel like in between our first few regulations and Regulation D and C dropped off a little bit, but good to see it back. It is stronger than ever, especially now that people opt for that Terra Dragon, now that Fluttermane usage has dropped a little bit, but Giulio is playing that Choice Specs Fluttermane, so yeah, not going to be as easy to get that going.
Yeah, for sure going to be difficult to position Goldengo as the Terra Dragon compared to what we've seen most people with Terra Steel to make a Choice Specs, make it hit even harder. But of course, with Leftovers and Nasty Plot, you're kind of able to make up for not being Terra Steel by boosting your special attack by 2 stages with the Nasty Plot. I think, Jasdil with some recent success, Worlds Day 2, back in Yokohama and the Malaysia National Championship top 4 as well here in this calendar year, so has some success on his hands trying to do well into Giulio. And I think the big strategy obviously that Giulio needs to be prepared for is this Tornadus Landorus combination of Tailwind and Rain Dance, and then both Bleakwind Storm and Sandseer Storm will be 100% accurate at that point.
Yeah, both Tornadus, in combination with either the Landorus, Urshifu, or even Goldengo can be very devastating. But of course, Giulio is playing that Cresselia with the Trick Room, so can twist that speed control game into his favor a little bit. Especially then with the Amoonguss being able to dish out some spores. And we are going to get into this first game here with the Goldengo Landorus lead versus the Cresselia Iron Hands. So Iron Hands obviously could go for a fake out here. This Tornadus is not playing Covered Cloak or Terra Ghost. But do you really need that, if you're going to set up the Trick Room anyway? This Tornado is probably not the biggest threat here, but the Skoldango, if it starts going for some nasty plots, can be a little bit of a threat since, Iron Hands, it's not really damaging it with anything that, like, maybe a Wild Charge, but even, a Wild Charge is something that a Goldango can take fairly well, and then there is the Leftovers recovery. So, yeah, Giulio, even if he does bring out the Trick Room here, does have to reposition a little bit, but is going to stay in and take this Earth Power from the Goldango. Land.
That is a lot of damage, the Earth Power into Iron Hands there. Kind of, again, Assault Vest doesn't even matter with how much damage that did, but the Nasty Plot will boost Goldango's special attack by 2 stages. Wild Charge does not do nearly enough to that Goldango slot, and Cresselia is able to twist the dimensions with the Trick Room, so for the next 5 turns, the slower Pokemon will be moving first, which obviously benefits Iron Hands and Cresselia in this spot.
And now, another Wild Charge is not going to be able to knock out this Goldango, and honestly, I'm not confident in this Cresselia, being more of a supportive Pokemon to do the little bit of damage it still needs. So, Goldango, even though the Trick Room is up, still in a great position to do some big damage here. But the Landorus is a little bit threatened since, this Cresselia is also playing Ice Beam, so we'll be able to, attack it with 4 times ness, but a Wild Charge from the Iron Hands going into the Goldango hangs on with just a little bit, and the recoil actually also not enough to knock out the Iron Hands. Ice Beam from Cresselia coming in here is also not enough to knock out this Landorus as the Shadow Ball comes out from this Goldango into the Cresselia, hits it super effectively, but it hangs on.
Oh, it hangs on at 5! With 5 HP, Cresselia just barely hanging on, and then the Levitate is going to mean that Cresselia doesn't take any damage from the Earth Power there. So Jasdil feeling really confident knowing the Ice Beam would not knock out the Landorus, but then it's anticipating the +2 Shadow Ball would have taken down Cresselia, and it didn't.
Yeah, so a lot of Pokemon hanging on with just a sliver of HP. They're all in the red right now, but Trick Room is still up, and another Wild Charge will be enough to knock out the Goldango. Landorus switching out, does not want to go down yet.
No, definitely not. Wants to save that for when Trick Room expires in a few turns. So Landorus will swap into the Rillaboom for Jasdil. He's now revealed his 3rd Pokemon in this matchup. If you anticipate Tornadus as the 4th for when you can set up Rain Dance for 100% accurate hits, maybe that's something Giulio has to be prepared for. But Goldango will protect from the Wild Charge, so he stays alive on this turn, and then Lunar Blessing is going to actually heal up both of Giulio's Pokemon, getting them out of the red. Of course, they're still very low to the point that a Goldango would be able to knock them out, but since Trick Room is up, they still get to move first.
Yeah, and now the Goldango has recovered quite a bit of HP with the Leftovers and the grassy terrain, and this Rillaboom can threaten this Iron Hands with a Fake Out now, so it will not be able to knock out the Goldango, if it goes for a Wild Charge. And this Cresselia is not going to do enough damage to knock out this Goldango either. So Goldango's still in a really nice position, and also just still doing a great job at stalling out this Trick Room here a little bit. And we did see that Giulio has the Heatran and the Amoonguss in the back. I don't know if he wants to consider a switch here. I'm not sure if you want to save the Iron Hands or the Cresselia for later, but gonna have to see how this plays out.
And he's deciding to terrestrialize a low HP Pokemon here in the Cresselia, going Terra Poison. Makes so much sense as a levitating Pokemon. You already get rid of one of those main weaknesses in ground you are immune to. So changing its typing, the Fake Out goes towards Iron Hands, which will stop its attack on this turn, and Lunar Blessing again from Giulio is going to help recover more HP onto both this Cresselia and the Iron Hands. And maybe that first one wasn't too crucial, but this second one definitely might feel better. Cresselia goes down because Make It Rain is a neutral hit into that slot, and he already had the Nasty Plot boost from beforehand. So Giulio's terrestrialization is gone for this game 1.
Yeah, Giulio really wanted that Cresselia to survive there, going for the Terra Poison to, get neutral damage from the Shadow Ball as opposed to super effective. But yeah, Jasdil just going for that Make It Rain, which is of course the more powerful move, just gonna knock it out. And Now, the Iron Hands did recover a little bit of help from that Lunar Blessing, of course, but Trick Room is slowly disappearing one by one, and even the Samungas right now cannot put anything to sleep, since, of course, Goldengo does have that good as gold ability, and Rillaboom being a grass type is not going to care too much about that either, but Julio is going to bring it in here anyway.
Yeah, you have to bring Amoonguss in just right now. Since Trick Room is up, you at least know that it will be moving faster than both of the Goldengo and Rillaboom on Jasdil's end. If it's the Pollen Puff strategy, maybe just to get his get his Iron Hands as healthy as possible, or even a Leaf Storm into the goal. It's a tough spot for Julio right now.
Yeah. But yeah, the Pollen Puff could still be very nice here for this Iron Hands if you manage to keep it healthy, but the Cresselia being gone means that you do not have another Trick Room coming out once this one expires, and that's probably just what Jasdil wants, to help the Goldengo then deal a lot of damage. It is going to go for a Protect.
Yeah, the Goldengo doesn't take any damage here on this turn, and that's okay with Julio, as he will Pollen Buff Iron Hands back up over 50%, back into the green, actually, and if it doesn't get targeted down, this turn will be even healthier thanks to the grassy terrain recovery, but it's all up to the Rillaboom, and no, actually, high horsepower going into the Iron Hands, and with the critical hit, it was crucial that Amoonguss had the Pollen Puff on that turn, because if not, Iron Hands would have been KO'd.
Yeah, that high horsepower with the critical hit basically dealing back all the damage that Iron Hands has recovered through Pollen Puff and grassy terrains, and now the Trick Room is gone as well, and Goldengo is still on the field here, still, in a great position to just take out this Iron Hands, and really not too worried about this Amoonguss now, especially that the Trick Room is gone. I wonder if this Rillaboom might just continue attacking with high horsepower in case the Heatran comes in, but could of course also switch. Goldengo instead deciding that it's in a position to set up a nasty plot.
Might as well go for a second one, going to +3 at this point. There's the Woodhammer onto Iron Hands, knocking it out with the boost from the grassy terrain as well, taking care of the rest of the Iron Hands damage. So Julio's down to his last two Pokemon, and unfortunately for him, the Spore does not work on either the Grass-type Rillaboom or the good as gold, the Goldengo.
Yeah, so Amoonguss at this point really not in a great position to do much. Of course you can go for Pollen Puff into the Iron Hands, but yeah, you probably expected it to go down this turn. And so might as well go for a Spore, hope that maybe Jasdil goes for a switch, but did not happen in this case, and now it is Heatran Amoonguss versus Goldengo Rillaboom. And this Goldengo did just set up a nasty plot, which means that these Shadow Balls, or maybe even Make It Rain, either way, it is going to hurt quite a bit.
Yeah, and you can't terrestrialize out of this 4 times weak to high horsepower on the Heatran's end, because Cresselia had kind of wasted it earlier on with the Terra Poisons. This is a really tough position for Julio. Not going to get face down by high horsepower this turn, as Rillaboom decides to switch out since the grassy terrain is getting low. And Jasdil reveals his 4th Pokemon in this game, being the Hisuian Arcanine. I was wondering if he was going to try to win the game without having to reveal that information. So even if Julio loses this matchup, at least he gets a little small victory there in the Hisuian Arcanine on the switch-in. But Amoonguss actually puts Arcanine to sleep on the switch-in.
Yeah, Amoonguss just continues to go for Spores because, right now, maybe that's all it can really do. Does not want to, maybe, I thought that maybe it will go for Pollen Puff into Heatran to heal up any damage that it may have received this turn, but yeah, thanks to the Protect, that not happening. But now, this Arcanine being asleep is great because now you can focus all of your attacks into this Goldengo. Arcanine is going to be asleep for at least 1 turn. You do have to kind of still respect the high horsepower Rillaboom in the back, but right now I think you can focus on KOing this Goldengo with a fire type attack. But if I remember correctly, Jasdil has not used his terrestrialization yet. This Rillaboom is going to come back in grassy terrain back on the field.
Yeah, he has not used that yet, so it's going to be important to see what happens. And they're perfectly timed there, Shona, as Terra Dragon Goldengo will come out for Jasdil, now resisting a potential Magma Storm into that slot, or even the Earth Power, if that would be the choice, would just be a neutral hit here. But no Rage Powder means this +3 Shadow Ball will go into the Heatran, bringing it down incredibly low. Magma Storm does connect, but look, as that is resisted damage, not doing nearly enough to the Golden Go. And now with the follow-up, Pollen Puff onto that slot, doesn't pick it up. Might have felt a little bit safer to, click the click Pollen Puff onto your teammate to heal it up a little bit, but the next turn Golden Go can knock out the Heatran.
That is a tanky Heatran, being able to take a +3 Shadow Ball. That is insane. And also the Pollen Puff did more than I expected to that Goldango, so this might be just a really offensive Goldango, or a very tanky Heatran, or both, who knows. Trick Room still not, Speed Control still being in Jasdil's favor means that, this Heatran is going to be forced to protect.
Yeah, but the Amoonguss cannot protect in this slot since they don't have access to it. And a critical hit fake out meaning you're going to take a little bit more damage there. But the protect from Heatran will eat up the Shadow Ball that the Golden Go went for on this turn. So essentially not too much happens, and now you're in a spot with Heatran, or even if you try to go for a double protect or something just to stick around, the Amoonguss just doesn't have enough damage to deal with the rest of Jasdil's team.
Yeah, the Amoonguss, of course, it could redirect away the Shadow Ball, but it's not going to be able to redirect away a high horsepower. So I think at this point, you might be hoping for maybe something like a high horsepower miss. There is that 5% chance. Or I believe Julio just locked in another protect on that Heatran. So maybe just trying to KO this Goldango as fast as possible, but does not get the double.
No double protect. Amoonguss goes down. Heatran resisting that as well, but we know the fate that is going to come on Heatran's way as Julio is down to his last Pokemon here. There's the connect. Heatran goes down, and Jasdil Singh Deo will win Game 1 in convincing fashion, actually 4-0, keeping his Landorus alive, and then the Hisuian Arcanine that never even got to see the victory because he was snoozing in the back.
Yeah, I feel like Julio did not really have enough offensive pressure on his team in that first game. He did manage to set up the Trick Room, but that's the thing when you have both Cresselia and Amoonguss on your side, is that both of them aren't really the strongest attackers. He had both Iron Hands and Heatran, and then once the Iron Hands went down, just the Heatran is there's not enough firepower against a Terra Dragon Goldango, and also the high horsepower from the Rillaboom being a threat means that, you're gonna have to adjust your strategy a little bit going into this game too.
Yeah, for sure. And then because, like we mentioned, the Cresselia taking that terrestrialization so early on just to get knocked out anyway, it really left Heatran in a tough spot where it might have preferred to be a grass type in front of that stomping tantrum, right? If the Shadow Balls were going to be neutral anyway, then maybe just being the grass type helping against the Rillaboom matchup could have been the difference. But for sure, Julio is going to have to make some adjustments in this spot. And let's see what he's able to do. Is he going to win this game and force a Game 3, or will Team India pick up their second victory of the week here against Team Italy? Landorus Incarnate and Golden Go is the lead yet again for the on the far side of your screen, but we will have a little bit of a switch up with Fluttermane next to Cresselia for Julio.
Yeah, Fluttermane, a little bit more of that offensive pressure that I mentioned might have been missing in that first game, but and also you don't need Trick Room for Fluttermane to be a very strong attacker. It is going to threaten this Goldango here right away, but this Landorus Incarnate is also threatening the Fluttermane with a Sludge Bomb, of course. But we're gonna have to see if Julio gets that Trick Room out, if he has the Heatran or the Iron Hands in the back to maybe start dealing some damage there, but instead a protect from Goldango first.
And no swaps from either trainer here, so Goldango will just protect in case a Shadow Ball goes into that slot, which is what we have there. And now the Earth Power into Fluttermane. That's a pretty strong Pokemon on the special defense stat, and it did not like taking that. Ice Beam does not get the one-hit KO, just like we saw in Game 2, but that was a little bit closer to it than it was before.
Yeah, a little bit little bit more damage, but still not enough to knock it out. And I really like the Earth Power there into the Flutter Mane slot because, you know, there is of course the chance of a Heatran coming in here. So, and then the Cresselia maybe setting up a Trick Room. So, yeah, I agree with that cover. You know, the Sludge Bomb obviously would not have done any damage if a Heatran had come in here. But Flutter Mane surviving now means that it will be able to go for another Shadow Ball into the Scoldangle slot.
It does switch out on this turn, though, for Jasdil, so will it be the Hisuian Arcanine or the Rillaboom, which he brought in Game 1? The answer for now is Rillaboom, setting up the grassy terrain, and will have access to Fake Out on the following turn. But the Shadow Ball from the Flutter Mane goes towards that Rillaboom, and he takes that pretty well. You're going to trade his Flutter Mane for it, as it does get knocked out from this second Earth Power. So Giulio losing. We said we wanted more offensive pressure from him, but he does lose his Flutter Mane here early on in Game 2. However, this does allow Cresselia to set up the Trick Room.
Yeah, now that Flutter Mane is gone, you're more than okay with setting up the Trick Room and bringing in your slower attackers. And although the Flutter Mane did not get any damage onto that Goldangle with the Shadow Ball, maybe just, you know, bringing that Landorus to low HP and a little bit of damage on the Rillaboom might be all you need.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing that was, when you talked about earlier, the Earth Power to Flutter Mane covering for a Heatran switch in, right? It also covered for a potential Iron Hands switch in, so it seems like Giulio having a difficult matchup, specifically against this team where Landorus has a special ground attack that it can go for. Cresselia will swap out into the Heatran, though, so now Giulio has two stronger Pokemon here that have more offensive output than the Cresselia had before. And Rillaboom swaps to the fourth Pokemon for Jasdil's end, which is the Hisuian Arcanine yet again. This Intimidate only really mattering onto the Iron Hands, as Heatran is a special attacker. But Jasdil will just go for a double protect on this turn. He knows he just has to play through these turns of Trick Room anyway, just making it through these 5 turns before he can get his chance at victory. And he's actually immune to the Fake Out there, so smart on the swap in as a Ghost type.
Yeah, very nice switches there, and now the Scoldango, once again, even though it is in Trick Room, still a very big threat here, you know, especially once it gets those nasty plots going. Is more than okay in an okay situation here to go for another Terrestrialization into that Dragon typing. The Iron Hands being at -1 attack, also meaning that, you know, it won't do as much damage as before. So, and of course you can switch the Arcanine back out and intimidate this Iron Hands even more. But Heatran, depending on, you know, how quickly you deal with it, could become a little bit annoying with that Magma Storm.
Iron Hands actually swapping out on this turn into the Cresselia because he wants to get rid of that Intimidate drop, but Jasdil will match and swap out Hisuian Arcanine here to bring the Intimidate for later whenever Iron Hands comes back on to the field. And in comes the Landorus Incarnate, just barely clinging on with hardly any HP remaining. And now it's time to Terrestrialize Goldengo into a Dragon type yet again, just like Jasdil did in Game 1, changing this matchup chart, no longer weak to Earth Power and the Magma Storm. Goes for the Magma Storm, or goes for the Earth Power, excuse me, but into the Landorus, so a great switch from Jasdil, taking no damage, immune to that ground attack, and getting a free Nasty Plot off.
Yeah, that Nasty Plot really, the move I think Giulio might have been dreading the most, because now, being a Dragon type means Heatran cannot hit it super effective anymore with the fire moves, and these Shadow Balls are going to be quite powerful as Heatran goes for a Terrestrialization.
It's kind of a tough spot. Who do you Terrestrialize in this spot? You can turn Cresselia into the Poison type, so it's not weak to Shadow Ball, but then that leaves this Heatran wide open to a potential ground attack on the other side. So Giulio valuing Heatran's health more, going for Terra Grass. The Magma Storm does connect this time on to the Goldengo, does a little bit of damage, and will have that residual damage at the end of every turn. But as a Dragon type, you're weak to the Ice Beam, but not weak enough. Does not do enough damage to stop this Goldengo. And there's the Shadow Ball into Cresselia for the one-hit KO.
Yeah, Cresselia still being a Psychic type means that the Shadow Ball is going to easily knock it out. And yeah, this Landorus did go for Protect, which Giulio might have called, or might have just chosen that it's not a threat if he goes for the Terra Grass on his Heatran. And Trick Room turns are slowly running out, so I think Giulio has to hurry up a little bit. The Slanderous is at very, very low HP, and the Iron Hands is coming in here with the Fake Out pressure, which, of course, now that the Gholdengo is not a Ghost type anymore, can be hit by that as well. But you might also just want to go for some damage and try knocking both of these Pokemon out, or, to maybe also catch a switch in from Jasdil.
And I do believe this is the last turn of Trick Room here. So Giulio's last stand under the Twisted Dimensions, and the Hisuian Arcanine will swap in, intimidating these Pokemon. Iron Hands is going to be moving faster under Trick Room, so you don't necessarily need to click Fake Out on this turn. Gholdengo protects, but it looks like that's not the target on Jasdil's end. That's the Drain Punch into Hisuian Arcanine. Intimidated, that does a lot of damage. Magma Storm lands, but it's resisted, so it hangs on in the red. If that was an Earth Power into that slot, that would have been a KO.
Yeah, I was almost hoping an Earth Power would come out here because, the Landorus did protect last turn, so if you go for Drain Punch and Earth Power into that slot, you do cover both, the Landorus staying in and also potential Hisuian Arcanine switching in. But instead, going for the Magma Storm, but, that is going to do a little bit of damage every single turn. But as you mentioned before, also, this was the last turn of Trick Room, and now the Gholdengo at +2 is threatening this Heatran with a lot of damage. Probably not going to be enough to knock it out though, and this Iron Hands at full HP is also still going to be able to take some moves very, very well.
Heatran will protect on this turn, so if Giulio goes for any attacks this turn, it can only be from this Iron Hands. So there's the Flare Blitz onto the Iron Hands, bringing it down under half HP. And does Jasdil call the protect as Hisuian Arcanine knocks itself out to the recoil? Just go for a spread attack, or the Shadow Ball! He called the protect into the Iron Hands. Heatran watches on as the Iron Hands gets knocked out, and that could have been a turn for Giulio to get 3 damage there and potential knockout onto the Gholdengo.
Yeah, Jasdil predicting that protect beautifully, or maybe also just deciding that, hey, the Heatran could go for a protect. This Iron Hands, it is that typical Assault Vest set, doesn't even have the option to go for a protect, so I'm just going to double into it, knock it out, and then the rest of my Pokemon will be able to deal with this Heatran now that this Landorus is coming in here. Of course, cannot hit the Heatran with ground types anymore, but it does have the Sludge Bomb, which is super effective against the Grass type, which this Heatran did Terrestrialize into. So at this point, I don't think there's much this Heatran can still do to come back from this.
Yeah, that's what's funny about the Terra Grass Heatran. It was like, a lot of times the downfall was it was really tough into the Genies because of Hurricane. But in this case, it's tough into it because of Sludge Bomb on Landorus Incarnate. So still losing to the Genies, but in a different way. And let the Shadow Ball pick up that last KO. And Jasdil Singh Deo with an impressive 2-0 victory over Guilio Tarlao, giving India their second win of the weekend here in Top 8 of the World Cup.